Chapter 27. Hidden Sand Convergence. Part 1. A sandstorm rages. A curtain of sand has been wailing for hours, making everything in 100 kilometers radius absolutely unbearable. Sight is impaired to the point of non-existent. Even if it weren't for the fact that countless grains of sand buffet your face, it'd still be impossible to see any farther than your nose. Hearing is strained with the gales, making it difficult to focus on your own thoughts, let alone what someone beside you might be saying, unless they shout in your ear. Even then, it might not work. The other senses aren't as affected, although they're not happy. Either smell becomes unbearable when there's only dry sand to make it to your nose. Taste, well, let's just say you don't want sand getting anywhere near that, and touch shouldn't be an issue as long as you prepare well for a journey through the desert. 4 figures are currently fighting their way through this nightmare. 2 of them walking while the other 2 are sitting inside a large puppet, vaguely resembling a salamander. It has a large metallic shield strapped just behind its head that provides its riders cover from the sand, with the puppet master holding aloft several more metallic plates for additional protection. Being well trained in navigating these lands, they've prepared to defend their last 3 senses, wearing protective cloaks, goggles, and face masks. Sight and hearing are still an issue, but they can manage. One of the people sitting inside the puppet is focusing on a pulsating seal, a hexagon within a circle, carved into its back. The white outline glows at set intervals, but otherwise does nothing else. After keeping it active for a few seconds, he deactivates it. They continue to walk further, or rather the salamander puppet walks them further, and several minutes later, the man activates the hexagonal seal again. This time, something does happen besides it glowing white. A red dot blinks at the very edge. One of the other cloaked figures gathers their final ally along with the puppet master, who brings in all of the protective plates to form a tighter wall around them. They were specially built to withstand environments such as this, so they prove more than effective at keeping them safe from the hazards. Even the raging winds aren't as intrusive anymore, allowing them to actually hear each other. The man with the hexagonal seal removes his facial protection to reveal his elongated face and sunken cheeks, making him look constantly sleep-deprived. He sighs, exasperated, but glad to let his face breathe for a moment. "Lord Kankuro, I have a soul signal." Kankuro removes his mask. "Just one?" "Shishio, we're looking for 2 adults and 3 children." The other 2 give themselves some breathing room as well. The man's blonde hair still peeks down from his cowl, covering one eye. The woman has to tuck in her brown strands back and again. "All due respect, sir," the woman speaks in an even and polite manner. If Shishio believes it worth noting, then it's no ordinary signal. Shishio nods. "It's like nothing I've ever seen before. I know it's none of the creatures that live in the desert, and it's definitely not human. I think it's worth inspecting." Kankuro twists his tongue around the inside of his cheeks, mulling it over for a moment. "I'll trust your instincts. We'll check it out." He turns to the other man. "Koji, be ready to jump into combat if need be." And then to the woman. "Ameno, preserve your chakra. We know Naruto and the rest should have been around here somewhere when the sandstorm hit. We might need every bit of healing you have." "Yes, sir." Koji and Ameno nod. Everyone puts back on their goggles and masks, making their way in the direction Shishio's sensory ability detected the presence. It takes them about 20 more minutes of wading through sand that only gets piled on and lifted from the winds. At the end, they reach a large rock formation, multiple stone arches intertwining with each other. The largest ones would probably tower over the hidden sand's entrance gates. Shishio has his sensing hexagon active, and they're getting closer and closer to the signal. Koji gathers sand around High Fist, creating a gauntlet. Ameno gathers water from a ground in the salamander's back and gathers it around her hands, shaped like a scorpion's claws. The signal leads them to the back of one of the larger arches, which has a very secluded carved-out section that completely blocks the sandstorm. And in the very back of this arch is a house. Its front is beige in color, with some purple and brown pipes to the side. Its blue-tiled roof slumps down, even further down on the sides, so it reaches even lower than the front door. As they cautiously get closer, they get a clearer view of the sign that hangs above the door. "Uzumaki Residence." Kankuro rips off his gear, "What?" and scrunches his face. They all hop off Salamander and get to the door. Kankuro knocks on the door, keeping Salamander at front, while everyone sticks to the sides. The door swings open and a blonde head peeks out, turning to Kankuro. Naruto smiles widely. "Hey, Kankuro. Whatcha doing all the way out here?" He motions them all to enter. Get inside, weather out there's crazy. Kankuro thanks Hinata as she places cups of tea at the table for all four of them. He looks around, still a bit in disbelief that this place exists. It looks like a perfectly ordinary living quarters. 4 beds at the back and the lounge area where they're currently seated. They're seated on a comfy sofa, with Naruto, Hinata, and the 3 kids he was informed of sitting on the sofa opposite of them. You know, I somehow both didn't expect this, and I'm somehow not surprised. You never cease to amaze, do you? He takes a sip of his tea. Believe it or not, we're actually inside one of my toad summons. He says nonchalantly. Kankuro stops for a second, mid-drink, and shares a confused look with his team. He shakes his head. You know, I'm not even gonna ask. What are you guys even doing here, anyway? Out on a mission? We were actually sent out to look for you. The sandstorm surprised us all, and we figured you should be somewhere in the middle of it by the time it started, so Gaara sent us out to get you. Although it looks like it wasn't necessary. I apologize for wasting your time worrying for us. She bows and turns to the slightly familiar faces. If I recall, you 3 were in the joint Chunin exams 3 years ago, correct? That's correct. The woman places a hand over her chest. I'm Ameno, and these are Koji and Shishio. She motions to the handsome blonde and the man with the sunken face, respectively. A pleasure. I'm Hinata Hyuga, and these are Katori, Yakimaru, and Shoto. Katori and Yakimaru wave, while Shoto gives a respectful nod. It's difficult to bow while seated. And I'm Naruto gets interrupted by Koji. Naruto Uzumaki. Trust me, we know. Say, how about we have a friendly fight? Koji smirks. Ha, you got it. Just say when. He readily agrees. Ameno sighs and shakes her head. There you go again, Koji. Can't you at least wait until we get back? Although it is true that we've heard a lot about you, Naruto Uzumaki. Not just from the stories but from Sakura Haruno as well. Huh? You guys know Sakura? Naruto looks between the 3 of them. We ran into each other during the previous joint Chunin exam and conversed at length about our villages, about medical ninjutsu, about you. She gives a sly smile. Naruto rubs the back of his head. Probably not a lot of flattery, then. Ameno giggles. It wasn't all flattery like the stories following the 4th war, but all of her stories came from a special place in her heart. You are special, but not for your victories during the war. If anything, I believe you're to be respected more for your shortcomings than your achievements. But I don't wish to prattle on. Naruto is visibly embarrassed. Kankuro settles back on the backrest of the sofa. Well, you might have to prattle on, cause we better get comfy while we're waiting. So, what have you 2 been up to? You sure you wanna ask that? It's been a wild ride. Kankuro looks outside the window at the sandstorm in the distance. We got a while, by my calculations. The sandstorm no longer rages. Although that doesn't necessarily mean the situation is better. They're still in the desert. It's still unbearably hot. At least they have the means to keep that at bay, especially with Ameno having water to keep everyone refreshed and healthy. The hidden sand ninja looked on in surprise and confusion as the house they were in shrunk into a toad and disappeared into a puff of smoke. On the way to the hidden sand, Katori continues to practice her aviary, summoning small ostriches. When she's skilled enough, it'll be big enough to ride. But for now, she has to settle for kind of waddling over it as it walks between her legs. It's a start. The rest of the travel is admittedly boring and uneventful until they eventually find themselves in the hidden sand village. The layout itself is actually somewhat similar to the hidden stone, buildings made of a sand-colored material that blends in perfectly with the surroundings, although here they're more spherical and oblong in nature, whereas the hidden stone had more edges. Surrounding it is a mountain that acts as a natural rampart wall, one pathway carved into it to act as an entrance. They make their way along the main road that leads directly to the Kazekage's office, where Kankuro and his group allow Naruto and his to enter and announce their arrival. Before the door is closed, Gaara has already stood up and gone in front of the desk. Naruto, it's good to see you again. They exchange a firm handshake. Naruto taps Gaara's shoulder with his other hand. Good to see you too. Been what, almost a year? Just about. He then turns to Hinata and gives a respectful nod. A pleasure to see you as well, Hinata Hyuga. He bows. Lord Kazekage. He begins making his way back to his desk, clearing away some scrolls and papers stacked on it. Please, you may simply call me Gaara when it's only us. We are all friends here, after all. He smiles and takes a look at the kids stood behind them. And I presume these are your protégés. The kids bow to the Kazekage. There's an odd air to him that they can't exactly put their finger on. He seems stiff, but at the same time trying to be loose, distant while trying to be close. Yakimaru in particular recognizes his demeanor all too well. Despite his young age, he's had to act in different ways to survive and care for his mother, and he's had to change his personality to match any given situation. The man in front of him is similar in that regard. He's not pretending to be someone else, per se, but he's definitely trying hard to change who he is. I'm Katori Uzumaki. I'm Yakimaru Kigatsu, sir. Shoto Teshin, at your disposal. You all certainly seem like a capable lot. And you've picked a mighty fine sensei to guide you. Gaara lightly curls his lips into a smile. Are you really friends with Dad? Katori looks between the two of them. Everywhere they travel, she keeps hearing about the amazing things Naruto's done, and somehow she keeps being surprised at how many people respect him. We are, indeed. Your dad, he was about to say sensei, before he remembered she's technically his daughter, as well, and that seems to be their primary relationship. He is the reason I am where I am today. Before he was ever the hero he is now. Naruto rubs the back of his head in embarrassment. It's nothing like that at all. Hinata can't help but giggle seeing this. For someone who spent his entire childhood wanting to be a hero, he's oddly shy about it now that he actually is one. It's pretty cute in her opinion. Gaara stands up once again. I know you've only just arrived and are most likely tired, but I'd still like to invite you all to eat. It truly has been long, and I'd like to catch up. Hinata looks down to the kids. The trek wasn't as grueling thanks to Kankuro. Would you like to come with us? The kids nod in response. You sure about that, Gaara? Can you leave the office? Naruto asks. I can. I've already finished with today's work, so I can spare some free time. Shall we? He leads them out into the city proper. Now seated in one of the fancier establishments in the hidden sand, as befits the Kazekage, Naruto, Hinata, and the kids are seated on one side, with Gaara and Kankuro seated opposite them. The kids quite frankly didn't recognize Kankuro at first as he's currently without his makeup. They had to profusely apologize after wondering who he was, although Kankuro's pretty used to others being surprised by seeing his actual face. For the most part of the dinner, they spoke of the happenings within the last year in the hidden sand and the other villages, of their missions in the cloud and stone, and eventually of the kids' training and their abilities. Kankuro uses his chopsticks to point to Katori. If it's birds you're looking for, the hidden sand has the fastest falcons in these lands. You can learn a lot here. She beams. Can I? I don't see why not, right, Gaara? He turns to his younger brother. Gaara nods. Of course. You are all our esteemed guests. Accommodating you is the least we can do. It's only a shame we cannot do the same for Shoto and Yakimaru, seeing as their gifts are more unique. You don't gotta worry about it, Gaara. You're doing more than enough. Naruto waves dismissively. At least with Yakimaru I do know someone who had the crystal style, but I can't even begin to wonder where to look for her. Doubt she'll be found, unless she wants to be. He looks out into the horizon. It's been nearly 2 years since he and his group ran into Gurren. He knows Anbu has looked for her, but apparently nothing's come up at that time. Eventually, Sanada ordered them to stand down and cease the hunt for the former hidden sound ninja to focus their efforts on other matters. I don't wish to sully the evening by talking about business, but he looks around the table at the pleasant mood that had been created. It's rare that he really gets to have evenings like this one. We can hardly stop you from doing so, Lord Kagara. Hinata corrects herself. I did receive word from both Lord Raikage and Lord Tsuchikage about everything that happened, and I believe there may be something pertinent. I can't speak with certainty, but I believe it may be worth investigating. Information on the great beasts? Or perhaps related to them. Since time immemorial, the Land of Wind and the shinobi clans living in its territory have been in possession of a series of prismatic keystones that hold special properties. Kankuro looks at his brother from the corner of his eyes. Is this wise, Gaara? Gaara keeps his gaze focused on his guests. This is no longer solely about the hidden sand's prosperity. The world may very well be at stake once more, we can't afford to keep secrets. Kankuro sighs. Very well. Naruto looks between the two of them. What's all this about? These prisms I speak of contain a great number of seals that are, frankly speaking, undecipherable. Our sealing experts have been unable to come to an agreement as to their exact nature besides one detail: they enhance the land and allow it to prosper and bear fruit. It does not work on barren deserts, but the few green areas our land possesses have yielded more crops and more trees as long as they're in the area. Gara puts all his bowls and utensils away as one would, having finished a meal. It frankly never occurred to me it could be in any way related, but after seeing that Tsuchikage's report and the nature of the temple and the seals within it, it's unmistakable. These keystone seals are similar to the temples. Naruto leans forward on the table, propping himself with both hands. Then we gotta check 'em out. If those things are also hiding away great beasts, Hinata remains calmer. Whoever we face is attempting to free great beasts sealed away by the Rashomon, as evidenced by the Kappa and Nu. However, as evidenced by the Temple of Stone's song, some are still outside the gates, albeit sealed away. Correct? These prisms have been a blessing to our land, but if they are to also be its destruction, then we should act right away and prevent it from happening. However, the issue here lies in that the intended time of departure was tomorrow. So soon? Kankuro shrugs. Well, we did expect you to arrive sooner, but that sandstorm slowed down our schedule. There's a caravan set to depart tomorrow for one of the territories that has a prism, so we were hoping to have you two go out as guards. It would essentially be a double mission. Protect the caravan from the bandits that have been causing trouble in those areas and also investigate the prisms for any tampering. However, I will understand if you're unable to. I mean, we could go. Naruto looks to the kids by his side. But I dunno if both of us can go and leave them in a new place alone so soon. Can't we go on the mission with you, Shisho? To put it bluntly, Shoto really wants to go on a mission. I'm aware we're no shinobi, but there have been kids even younger than us who go out on missions. We can handle it. Yeah. Katori and Yakimaru chime in. It's not as simply as that. Hinata brushed Katori's hair. You've grown exponentially since we all met you, but if bandits do attack, it will be dangerous. Yakimaru stares down at his plate. I think we're not going to be really ready as shinobi until we really see for ourselves what it's like. Gara observes the group discussion. I don't know whether this would help you, Naruto, but the kids could come with you. All three of them perk up. As I said, you'd be transporting the caravan, which will be made up of civilians, apart from the sand shinobi who are to accompany you, and a select few shinobi in training. Gara sizes up the kids. I suspect around their ages. They could join and perhaps even assist with the cultivation if they're in need of entertainment. They're not really sure if being put to work counts as entertainment, but the thought of going still excites them. Hinata looks between the kids and her boyfriend, with whom they seem to come to a non-verbal agreement with. If you believe the mission will not be hindered, then they could join as part of the caravan we're to protect, assuming there's space. Gara nods. There is indeed. And it is as the young Teshin said, they are in a unique position to learn what kids their age cannot learn from the academy. I advise using that to their advantage. You're right. I guess we shouldn't treat them as kids forever, huh? They're shinobi. All right. All three of them cheer. While they've all finished their meals, they do still remain in the establishment for a while longer to chat about the lesser things in life, the aspects of their lives that don't right kill them, as few of those as there are. Eventually they're escorted to the apartment they're to live in for the next 2.5 months, as is the arrangement for this mission. Naruto and Hinata still have their own room, but this time Katori has a room to herself, while the boys share. The following morning, the Hidden Leaf group meets with the caravan at the front gates. They all introduce themselves to the people they're to protect for the coming week or so. They all seem kind and welcoming folk and quickly help the kids settle in for the ride. They are also met by the two hidden sand ninja whose team they will be a part of. The Jonin and team leader is dressed in the standard sand attire, complete with a turban on her head that lets the cloth fall down to under her chin to protect from the ravages of the land. She has 2 red markings that run across her cheeks and go down 90 degrees, making them slightly resemble the Inuzuka markings. She also carries a fairly large scroll strapped to her back. The Chunin is a younger woman also wearing the hidden sand flak jacket and clothes, although her version is sleeveless. She has sandy hair tied up into a bulky ponytail with 2 strands of hair falling to the sides, braided. Strapped to her waist are 2 white tessin, small war fans, with white fur on their tips. The Jonin approaches them and shakes their hand. I'm Maki, I'll be team leader for this escort. And I'm Sen. The Chunin waves to them as she comes nearer. She squints her eyes and gets a closer look at Hinata. Haven't I seen you before? Hinata nods. We didn't speak, but we did see each other in the previous joint Chunin exams. Ah, that's right. Who would have guessed we'd be working together after so long? Naruto's beginning to feel left out. This is now the fourth person in 2 days that was at the Chunin exams. Sure, he got promoted for his deeds during the war, but it still kinda stings. He never actually got to be a part of the exams fully. Maki signals for the caravan to prepare for departure. We'll have plenty of time to catch up on the way. Alrighty. Sen goes to prepare her part of the caravan, while Naruto and Hinata ensure everything is in top condition on their end. A bit away from the caravan members, Maki comes to talk to them in private. Lord Gaara told me about the additional mission you two are on. I've no issues with it as we're going there, anyway. I just ask, if you've got something to do that doesn't involve guarding the caravan or its members, talk to me first. Bandits have been getting more and more active lately, and I need to know where my team is and what they're doing. They both nod. You can count on us. Maki smiles and turns to the caravan, speaking loud enough to be heard by everyone. Alright, people, let's move out. With that, the caravan begins moving out into the desert wastelands of the Land of Wind, their destination being the green lands on the borders, the Land of Rivers. End of chapter 27. Chapter 28. Hidden Sand Convergence. Part 2. The caravan travels through the desert at a steady pace, keeping to their schedule and even being slightly ahead. Making use of his abilities, Maki had Naruto send out the occasional shadow clones to scout ahead and warn them of any trouble. The few roving bandits that they encountered were swiftly dealt with, often by Naruto's shadow clones alone, which made the journey all the smoother. As Naruto and Maki walk at the front of the caravan on opposite sides of a camel, Naruto turns his gaze to the distance, focusing on seemingly no point in particular. Another group of bandits are dealt with. My clones are coming back with some more gear. Maki gives a light chuckle. I have to say, I think I underestimated exactly how useful your shadow clones are. Commander Kakashi was right, you're full of surprises. Huh? Naruto turns to look at her over the camel. You know Kakashi-sensei? Yeah, I was part of the sealing corps, assigned to the 3rd Division during the war. I worked closely with him to seal the reanimated. That's so cool. So Kakashi-sensei talked about me, huh? His curiosity gets the better of him. What kinda stuff did he say? Maki smirks. Sure you wanna know his opinion of a rambunctious 12-year-old? Maybe not. He hangs his head in dejection. On second thought, he wasn't exactly always a praiseworthy student. She giggles. Don't worry, it wasn't just embarrassing stories. He told us you're a man of virtue, moved to action by undying loyalty to your friends. That you can always be relied on when things get rough. He tries to hide his blush by scratching his cheeks. Just don't tell him I told you, alright? It can be our little secret. She presses her finger against her lips in a shushing motion. He laughs. Yeah, sure. So you know about sealing? You know a lot about these prisms Gaara mentioned? That's precisely why I was chosen for the mission. The Sand Jonin rummages through her pouch and takes out a small booklet, waving it over the camel's back. Lord Tsuchikage sent us everything you uncovered at the Temple of Stone's song before it collapsed, and I'm to try and decipher their nature given our new information. Right. You gonna have time, though? We're still on guard duty, after all. Maki nods. We'll have enough free time to look into it. Naruto remains quiet for a few moments more, his mind wandering to these prisms and what Gaara told them. You know, I'm not even sure what I want to find about them. Gaara said they're important to the Land of Wind and help with its resources. If we somehow put an end to that and people can't benefit from them anymore. Maki sighs and steals her eyes forward. You don't have to worry about that. We know more than anyone just how valuable these tools have been, but that's also why we can't afford to just leave them be if they're going to end up being a danger to us, or worse, a danger to the innocents who live near them. We have to act right away if we're to prevent a disaster. He gives a light smile. I guess I can't be feeling sorry if the people actually affected by this have resolved themselves. You're the sealing expert here. Whatever you say, I'll follow your lead. Maki leans forward to get a better look at him, a teasing grin on her face. You've changed a lot from the stories Commander Kakashi told us. Naruto grumbles. Katori POV. Inside one of the camel-drawn carriages, the kids practice their chakra control in the absence of there actually being anything else to do. Katori gets restless often and quickly. She does have other things to entertain herself with. She still has the Hoyaku clan scroll she got back in the hidden cloud, which practically lists most of the things she can use with her ability given time and training. She also has several books kept in storage scrolls about avians, knowledge she needs if she's to increase the strength of her aviary and achieve her dream of riding an ostrich into battle. She sighs and leans over the railing that separated the driver's seating from the back of the carriage. Is it so difficult to stay focused? Shoto's closed eyes twitch in annoyance. This is the 9th sigh in 5 minutes. Yes. She shouts, spooking the driver slightly. Sorry. She mutters and slithers back inside. Is this what missions are? A whole lot of walking and staring at nothing? It's not nothing. They all turn to the back of the carriage, where Hinata is walking behind with her Byakugan activated. Somehow she looks to both be looking at them but also through them, her attention split between several places. She then deactivates her Byakugan, focusing solely on them. As guards, we have to be on the lookout for anything that's even slightly suspicious. We must remain vigilant at all times and take note of inconsistencies, much like how we did while training your transformation. Wouldn't they be visible in the desert? Yakimaru has been creating smaller clusters of crystals in his hands, trying to get a better feel for his jutsu. Sen chimes in from the other side, her farm half visible from the carriage's covering. Not quite. If they're well trained, they can hide in plain sight, and if they caught word of valuable cargo being transported, they can prepare in advance. How do you even hide out here? Shoto looks around the vast emptiness. When we trained in the hidden stone, we had a lot more to work with. Sen looks to Hinata with a smile, the leaf kunoichi, seeming to understand what she's about to do. Sen takes out one of her Tessin fans and spreads it open, waving it vertically in front of herself. Like a mirage, her body disappears and she's nowhere in sight. Huh? They all perk up and look around, Shoto hanging from the end of the carriage looking everywhere. And that's one way to do it. They whip their heads to where Sen's voice came from, the driver's seat, just in time to see the driver jump from his place, startled for a second time in only so long. The middle-aged man sighs heavily. You lot'll be the death of me. Sen gives an apologetic smile. My apologies. She hops off and retakes her position near the back. With the proper skill set, you can accomplish a lot, but with the proper skill set, you can also fight back. Hinata pats Shoto, who's still leaning over the edge, on the head to motion him to get back fully inside. That's why it's important to keep training. If you can find creative ways to use your skills, you can be prepared for almost anything. Yakimaru opens his palm and stares into it, sensing the chakra he's sensing through it. What if we can't? If we can't think of something, and we get in over our heads? I know you'll be able to. All three of you are bright, and you've already fought through hardships and overcame obstacles. I believe in you fully. She gives a warm motherly smile. Later. On the first night of the journey, the caravan set up camp. The carriages are placed next to each other in a semicircle with a fire set up in front of them for them to eat and talk until the time comes for sleep to take them. The camels are tied to a large stone structure they'd found and set up camp besides. The people of the land of wind are prepared for the desert's harshness. The covering of the carriages serve a double purpose besides keeping shade during the day. In reality, they're covered in sealing formulae that have fire stored inside them that, when utilized correctly, can allow the fire to be released in small increments, turning the cloth into a heater. Once the flaps are closed, you can hardly feel the freezing desert night. Currently, everyone is gathered around the fire. At least the common folk are. The shinobi have been taking turns keeping watch, although having a sensor present has eased that task immensely, even having dozens of shadow clones scatter around to scout. It's probably one of the more relaxed missions Maki and Sen have been on, not being as stressed as usual. Katori, as usual, does not sit still. From the corner of her eye, she catches a glimpse of someone still sitting in one of the carriages, not taking part in the relaxed environment of conversations and eating. She spots a boy, seemingly not much older than herself, whittling a piece of wood with a small knife. Curiosity gets the better of her and she approaches, rising from her spot on the ground next to Naruto, or is it one of his shadow clones? And Yakimaru and Shoto nearby share a look, knowing she's up to something till they follow her. She makes her way to the carriage she saw and pokes her head up, giving a cheerful greeting. Hello. The boy inside yelps in surprise, scuttling back a bit and raising a small wooden puppet in front of him, vaguely humanoid looking with a missing leg. To Katori's surprise, the puppet actually begins moving on its own its limbs and body attached to 10 strings of chakra originating from the boy's fingertips. It puts up its fists, ready for a fight. Whoa! What's that and why can it move? Katori. Yakimaru taps her on the shoulder, but she doesn't even turn around as he and Shoto join her. Don't just sneak up on people. The Teshin boy scolds her and peers inside. I apologize for her. Well, don't. Check out the puppet, it's moving on its own. They all look inside to see the boy's startled expression now subsiding. He's sat on the flooring, hunched over as if trying to hide behind the much smaller puppet. A girl behind him rises, having been lying somewhere behind him until now. Shoto sighs. That's a puppet. Remember, Mr. Kankuro had one too? That big lizard-looking one. Oh, yeah. Katori taps her cheek with a finger. Hi. The boy's meek voice is barely audible. Hi. She quickly refocuses on her original target. I'm Katori. Who are you guys? The boy nervously looks between them and the girl behind him. The girl sighs and pats him on the head, causing the boy to grumble lightly and gets up to her feet. I'm Teori, this is Sanjin. He doesn't do well with people. Shoto Teshin. Yakimaru. Katori hops up onto the back of the carriage and approaches. Teori stands in front of Sanjin. Let's be friends. Katori extends a hand. You guys are gonna be shinobi, right? We are too. So we're gonna be rivals, not friends. Teori crosses her arms, which for most would signify that a handshake is off the table. Katori is not most people and keeps her hand out. We can be both. Our villages are friends, although we're not technically from the Hidden Leaf, but we will be as soon as we go there. I don't even really know if we're shinobi right now. We're training for it, but I dunno when you start getting to call yourself one, you know? Teori tilts her head. You're weird. Thanks. Katori beams. That wasn't the other girl tails off and sighs. Sanjin breaks the mildly awkward scene of Katori still holding out her hand and lifts his marionette in the air to finally shake her hand. Katori returns the handshake and looks down to Sanjin who's still sitting on the ground. Does this little one have a name? She leans down to be closer to eye level, causing him to scuttle back even more. Teori stands between them, essentially making Katori stare at her stomach. You don't know anything about boundaries, do you? Back home, when someone was feeling down, we'd all pitch in to help. We were all there for each other. Yeah, well, you're not back home. I'm all he needs. Teori narrows her eyes. Shoto steps up and places a hand on her shoulder, pulling her back. That's enough, Katori. If we're bothering them, then leave it. But, she tries to give him puppy dog eyes, but it has no effect. We're guests here. Yakimaru chimes in. We shouldn't make a bad name for sensei. Katori pouts. Fine. But we're gonna become friends soon, alright? She hops out the carriage, waving to the two sand kids. No, we're not. Teori shouts back and turns to sit next to her friend. So rude, that one. Right, Sanjin? She turns to look at him, noticing his gaze is turned to the outside, where the Leaf kids just left. A slight smile on his face, which causes Teori to frown in return. He doesn't always, so why is he smiling now, after that girl came in here being so pushy? Must be nice to be that outgoing and make friends that easily. His voice is soft and quiet. That's now how you make friends. She hugs her knees and takes one final look at her puppeteering friend before burying her face in her knees. Sanjin, you dummy. HM? The boy can only watch her in confusion, unsure what he did wrong to be called a dummy. Outside, the Leaf kids take a stroll, not far at all from the campsite and well within eyesight of their mentors. Katori sits down, puffing her cheeks. So rude, that one. Right, guys? Yakimaru shares a glance with Shoto and sighs. Do you have to be in everyone's face like that? Shoto nods in agreement. Yeah, you don't have to be friends with everyone, you know. Sure I do. Why wouldn't I? There's nothing wrong with wanting to make friends of your own. I've wanted to become a ninja for so long, and now I am, and I want to make the best of it. But I still miss everyone in the orphanage. Miss Shina, Takeo, Aki, Yumeji, Rintaro, Kazu, everyone. It still feels kinda empty without them. She hugs her legs, bringing her knees up to her chest. Yakimaru sits down with her. I know it's not the same, but you have us, right? I didn't really have a lot of family or friends, and looks like Shoto didn't either. The Teshin boy huffs and looks away. I have plenty of family, I'll have you know. We just didn't agree on anything. I know we're not as hyper as you, but I really love being with everyone as we are now." He gives a bright smile. Katori's lips curl up into a smile of her own, and she ruffles Yakimaru's hair. "That's really sweet. Thanks. And I'm sure Shoto feels the same, right?" He turns his head to look up to his teammate. "Well, it's not terrible being like this." He fully turns his back to them. Katori chuckles and hops to her feet, gently holding onto Yakimaru's shoulder, and pats Shoto on the back. "So you do like us?" Shoto simply flickers away. "Hey, get back here. Don't run away from our love." Katori follows him. Yakimaru chuckles and flickers after them. A few days later. The journey proved largely uneventful. Some bandits did manage to slip by their sensory abilities but were dealt with before they could even reach the caravan. Maki showed great proficiency with her binding cloth, locking dozens of them in place with the scrolls on her back and preventing them from moving or really doing much of anything. Likewise, Sen's genjutsu rendered many of them incapable of fighting, leaving them open for attacks. She carries around several vials of varying scents that she spreads through the air with her Tessin, the scents being an activator for her stronger abilities. So with them specializing mostly in support, although quite capable of offense themselves, that left Naruto and Hinata to take them down, or at least deal with the ones that weren't incapacitated. One thing that remained constant was Katori's insistence on bonding with Teori and Sanjin. The boy seemed overly shy and not very talkative, while Teori more than made up for it by keeping Katori at bay and being very insistent on not being friends. After several days of traveling with minor combat, the caravan has made it to the settlement. As Gaara said, it's one of the few but precious green territories in the land of wind and where one of these prisms is located that they're allowed to examine in their free time, as the mission is not quite over yet. The folk they escorted are loggers, tasked with collecting wood that's to then be transported back to the hidden sand from where it'll be distributed as necessary, although much of it will go to the puppet users for the creation of new puppets. With them being such a valuable commodity, that means bandit attacks trying to steal it or take over the settlements. Usually the shinobi stationed there are enough, but there's been a recent surge in activity, necessitating more shinobi to be deployed. Maki ensures that everyone from the caravan is set and has their possessions intact and leads them to where they'll be staying while they work the woods. Once everyone has been directed to where they need to be, she turns to her team for the mission. "All right, I'll check in with our allies already on the scene, and we can work out where our team fits in." Naruto squints his eyes and tilts his head. "Wait, there's already shinobi here? Then what are we for?" "As backup," Maki answers. "The prisms in these lands are invaluable to the land of wind and the hidden sand, so we always have people stationed here for protection, but the bandits have been getting bolder lately and more numerous." Sen places her hands behind her back, gently swaying back and forth of her heels. "As well as the inclusion of more loggers this year, as we've a growing need for lumber. That also increases the area that we're to cover and protect." "That's correct. We'll need to cover a wider area than usual for the duration of this mission." "Right." Naruto nods. "And because of my and Hinata's abilities, Gaara didn't really need to send more teams." "Correct, as well. Your shadow clones are worth their weight in gold when it comes to missions like this, and there's a reason the Byakugan has been so coveted by other nations for so long." Hinata gives an affirmative nod. "I'll do everything in my power. For now, rest up. It's been a long journey in the heat. I'll come back to you once I have a schedule, although chances are either of you two," she points to Naruto and Hinata, "will be out on guard duty at any given time." For the rest of the day, the group that arrived that day was allowed to collect themselves, with the real work starting the following day. The shinobi have their own dedicated lodgings, serving as a makeshift guard barracks. In order to keep them together, Katori, Shoto, and Yakimaru are to sleep in the common lodging, as well, along with all the other shinobi. It might not be the most ideal situation for them, but it does give them a taste of the way ninja operate while away from home. The next day, Hinata is stationed to guard the settlement, while Naruto heads to the forest to keep the loggers safe from potential attacks. Once he reaches the actual area where the trees are harvested, he's met by a very unique sight. Where he expected a simple forest like what he'd seen plenty of times in the Land of Fire, here things are a touch different. From the ground, grow thick trees as normal, many reaching several meters in diameter and dozens of meters in height. They're not as tall as normal. They have branches, they have leaves, but the most unique feature are the thin and extremely tall trees that seem to be growing from the shorter trees. Each small tree appears to have dozens of tall ones growing from its crowns reaching high up into the heavens. Naruto looks at this sight with very obvious bewilderment. Are those trees growing on trees? Sen makes her way up to him and looks at the splendid sight. Yep. It's a special foresting method we developed long ago to make the most use of our limited forests. So, which part are they gonna be cutting down? Top part. A special pruning method is used to make sure they grow the way they do for when it comes time to be cut down. After that, they regrow and are cut down every dozen or so years. Right? He doesn't really get most of it, but it definitely sounds impressive. So this somehow makes these forests last longer and gives you more wood? They do, yeah. Our ancestors had to experiment with such methods to keep the population fed. But we're not here to admire the forest, best get to our stations. Right. Naruto and Sen double-check their radios, make sure their signal flares are in place just in case something happens to the radios, and they each head out to their respective corners. As agreed upon, Naruto himself remains somewhere in the middle. He finds a solitary spot where he won't be disturbed and meditates for several moments, absorbing the natural energy, which seems to be plentiful in this area. It's nowhere near as potent as Mount Myoboku, but it's also stronger than anywhere else he's been. Once he enters Sage mode, he sends out 4 shadow clones, the limit to what he can conjure, while still maintaining his chakra in balance. The plan is for him to stay here and observe the surrounding area with his Sage mode, while his shadow clones reach the edges of his sensory area and extend it all the farther. All 4 of them sit down to meditate once they reach far enough, ensuring that their Sage mode doesn't run out. There's one thing in particular that bothers him. 2 chakra signatures mixed in with the villagers. They weren't present in the caravan, so they're definitely people who were already here. But why are shinobi harvesting the wood instead of being on patrol? He was led to believe everyone who lives here is a civilian. Then again, who is he to judge? If someone has retired and chosen to spend their days living out here, they're more than free to. This first day proves to be very uneventful, at least for the shinobi. The loggers are doing well. Everyone is packing their items, while some of the hidden sand shinobi go around where the trees have been cut, large scrolls slung over their shoulders. They place them down directly in front of the trunks, perform the required signs, and everything disappears in the blink of an eye. Storage scrolls sure do come in handy. Naruto leaves the sealing specialists to gather all the trees while he makes his way to where the main group is gathering. As he gets closer, he hears a very specific melody. A grass whistle. The melody is slow, almost somber but also nostalgic. In a certain way it makes him think of home. Home. Home is where someone's thinking of you, right? His eyes widen, remembering the song. He knows exactly what it is. He could be mistaken. Anybody could have learned this melody from somewhere or even come up with it on their own. It's entirely possible, but if he's right, he rushes forward to the meeting spot, the grass whistle getting louder and louder. He bursts from the trees and looks to the source. A young lad, around his age, is sitting on the ground, a bit away from the main group who are listening to his playing. His hair is shorter than Naruto expected, reaching only his shoulders, but is the dirty blonde he had in mind. His eyes are an unmistakable purple. Naruto cautiously approaches the boy, still not entirely sure if he has the right person as much as it looks like him. Yukimaru? He calls out to grab his attention. The boy stops playing and looks at Naruto, smiling brightly. You're here. I knew if I thought enough about you, we'd meet again. That's because this place is now your home too. 2 figures emerge from behind the boy. A tall slender man with messy brown hair and a woman with straight light blue hair. Both of them stop and stare at Naruto as if they've seen a ghost. Naruto furrows his brows and takes a single step forward. Gurren? Gozu? End of chapter 28.